Now this was a docuseries that I was eagerly anticipating. Adding to the Netflix watchlist, got a reminder and watched through it straight away. I knew about the serial killer the Son of Sam through many other documentaries that I'd watched in the past, but this take on the devastating murder spree that occurred throughout the 1970s was a journey that I never expected to go on. With this, I thought I'd give a review on the series. As it's a documentary, I'll be reviewing the storytelling, the way the series was shot, and also my view on if I'm on the side of Maury, or if I think it's all a conspiracy and speculation. Before I go ahead, make sure you go over to my Twitter, @brainpilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. So without further ado, I'm Brainpilot, and here is a review of The Sons of Sam: A Descent into Darkness. Just to let you know, this video will contain information about the series, so if you don't want to find out the ins and outs of the case, come back to this video once you finish the show. The Son of Sam is a serial killer that I was always aware of due to the sheer amount of murders he committed, and I was always under the impression that it was one man, David Berkowitz. However, this documentary paints the picture that the murders and attacks that occurred all throughout the 70s were down to more than one person, and that there was a dark underground cult of people carrying all of this out in a strategic way. The first episode showed us the history of the case, the victims, and how the police came to the conclusion that it was David Berkowitz acting alone and committing the ghastly acts. We were hearing the story being told from somebody else's perspective, giving a voiceover. This also led us to learn a little about Maury Terry, the person whose perspective the voiceover was from, but at the start it didn't go into too much depth about him. It solely focused on the case, other than the fact that Maury was committed, intelligent, and was like a dog that would not release his grip. There was something special about him. I thought when the episodes were unfolding, the pacing was done really well and allowed me to keep up to speed with everything that was going on. There were a couple of points where I did get a little confused, but I think that's down to the fact that the case that Maury was digging into and all of the information that he was uncovering was so detailed and literally took them across the globe, so a little confusion was bound to happen. The documentary was eerily creepy, and at points it was quite haunting to watch. Hearing how these people were killed and the information that Maury was uncovering really did lead to a larger piece being at play. I found it baffling at the fact that the police would not reopen the case. Considering all of the information that Maury had uncovered about the Carr family, the Sons, and the group called the Children, and all of them being connected, there were too many things that made sense for it to just be a coincidence and a conspiracy. All of these letters that Berkowitz was sending Maury, and all of the information that Maury was digging out just seemed to make sense, especially considering the fact that some of this was actually coming from Berkowitz's mouth in interviews. I feel the documentary did a fair job at painting both sides of the story, which is always good when watching a documentary. However, they were slightly more biased towards Maury's version of events that he had uncovered, but that's understandable due to the fact that the story is being told from his perspective and the theory that he believed. Considering all that we learned about the case, we learned a hell of a lot about Maury Terry. He dedicated decades of his life digging into this case and trying to bring what he had found out to the forefront and to become the real truth. Many officers viewed his theories as fiction, which I do find quite surprising. As the voiceover mentions, a lot of careers were made off of this case, so why would they want to reopen something that not only would diminish the competence of the police force at the time, but also re-inject fear into the public, knowing that there are killers at large that have been roaming the streets for over a decade. As the documentary was drawing to a close, there was this sad reality once we heard of Maury's passing, and it was summed up perfectly when watching it, as his family and friends were going through all of the evidence that he had, seeing if anything had been overlooked about the case. They found that Maury's most compelling evidence was his own story, that of one man's tragic journey into the abyss, and I think that sums this whole documentary up perfectly. As much as these 4 episodes were about exposing what Maury believed to be the truth about the Sons of Sam, it was just as much about obsession, a demise, and a man that got caught up in something that he had created and let get out of his control. As one of his victims said, it didn't even really have anything to do with Maury. He just got involved, got caught up in it, wanted to expose the truth, and couldn't let go. Even after the second interview with Berkowitz decades later, and the public somewhat understanding where Maury was coming from, he still wouldn't let it go and put it to bed. And it's a shame because he dedicated a lot of his life to trying to expose the truth, which in some ways he did successfully do. People were on his side and did believe him. The end of the series had me with my jaw wide open and in utter disbelief. The cutting to black and then to the almost present day in 2018. I was very confused at first, but when it turned out that they had found the person who murdered Alice Perry 40 years later, and that it was in fact the security guard, somebody who Maury said would have had to have been involved, it had me in shock. Also, the haunting idea that the murderer had a copy of Maury's book. It was spine-tingling. I believe this adds credibility to the theories that Maury was making. This man committed years of his life to trying to expose the truth, and I for one do think that there is truth behind what Maury Terry was saying. There's too much information that can be connected together for it to just have been David Berkowitz. You've even got family members of the victims saying that they believe what Maury is saying. Even a victim that got shot is on the side of Maury and doesn't believe that David Berkowitz shot him. Based off of what the documentary showed me, I do believe that there was most likely a larger group at play back then. I'm not saying that everything that Maury said is likely to be true, but I think there is a lot of truth in the information that he shared and uncovered. I think it will forever be one of those things. Was it just David Berkowitz, or was it a larger group at play? We see at the end that there are still people trying to uncover the truth, but it's difficult to know if it will ever be revealed. Maury dedicated many years to trying to expose the truth, and he made great ground in trying to uncover some of these other groups that could have been involved. There's so much information known about them, and still no other convictions. So I believe David Berkowitz will always be the one and only son of Sam in the eyes of the public. It was a fantastic docuseries that had me hooked at every episode, and every revelation, and every interview that was taking place. It's haunting, saddening, and also mind-boggling all at the same time. It is about the sons of Sam, but it is just as much a telling of the work of Maury Terry. I would suggest giving this show a watch. It's brilliant. What did you think of this docuseries? Do you believe anything that Maury had to say? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.